So there's this thing that happens right now that I think a lot of us are sitting inside of, and we haven't quite found the words for it yet. It's this push and pull between passivity and activity, between the part of you that knows you need to move and the part of you that is so tired of being told what movement is supposed to look like. And I keep asking myself honestly, how much of my engagement with both of those things is truly my own? How much of my action is actually mine? And how much of my rest is actually mine? Because we've been given two scripts about this, right? One script, one side of this says grind, right? Prove yourself through output. Your value is what you produce. And on the other side of things, we have something that's dressed in softer clothes that says, if it feels like I'm pushing, well, then it's not aligned. Rest is radical. Honor your energy. And both of those things sound like wisdom until you realize that neither one asked what you actually want. Are you a human doing or are you a human being? Is a phrase that I carried around for years and I thought it was mine. And then I realized, no, that came from a podcast from someone else's authority. And I let it shape how I felt about my own desires, about work, about building things, about making things. And look, y'all, all of this conversation right now is very Aries. And depending on when you hear this, we probably have 5 planets in Aries right now, my loves. We have the Sun, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and Mars all stacked up in the sign that says, I exist and I have the right to move. And there's a degree in this new moon, upcoming new moon, that I think changes the whole conversation, which I'll be coming back to later. But first, I need to tell you what's happening in the sky, what this month is going to look like, because it's wilder than anyone is letting on. So, 5 planets right now in Aries. We got Saturn, which moved into Aries late February. We have Neptune, which followed shortly after entering Aries as well for the first time in over 160 years. So when I say 5 planets in Aries, I mean that the planet of discipline and the planet of the dream are sitting in the same fire sign right now. And that hasn't happened in this sign since the early 1800s. And here is how I've been feeling that energy right now. Saturn in Aries is this curriculum I didn't sign up for, but I'm clearly enrolled in. And it keeps asking me, what are you actually committed to building? And I don't mean the version you describe when someone asks what you're working on. I mean the thing you'd show up for, even when nobody is watching. When the initial spark isn't there, how do you show up to the work that you're called to do? Because action isn't perfect all the time, y'all. There's no escape from work, unfortunately, and sometimes fortunately. But regardless of that, we make the work, whatever the work is for you, harder when we don't really know where it's going. And here's the piece that keeps landing for me about the spiritual warrior, which is what Neptune in Aries is all about. Neptune, the planet of spirit, and Aries, the planet of action. Spiritual warrior, right? How I'm contextualizing this is that the first enemy is never outside. It's your own fear, your own inattention, your own self-importance, anything that blurs the power of your will. And I think that's the part we skip when we talk about courage, right? We keep looking for external obstacles, right? But the thing between you and the brave step is almost never an outside force. It's the story you told yourself about why you couldn't take that step in the first place. And Neptune in Aries is saying, cool, but is the dream still alive inside that structure? Or did obligation eat away at it? Whatever that thing is that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet, whatever that thing is that lives in your chest and you keep circling back to even when you try to be reasonable about it, that is what Neptune in Aries is all about, right? The spirit of our courage to actually take action. Now, Mars rules this whole stellium right now, rules Aries itself. And Mars is the part of this conversation that says, are we done talking about it? And can we be more about it? Can we move? Before the new moon even arrives on April 17th, Mars meets Neptune in Aries on April 12th. So we got the planet of will and the planet of vision in direct conjunction with one another. And that's not a planning meeting, right? That's a moment where the dream and the action collapse into the same breath. What do you want badly enough to move toward without a guarantee? What would you build if you stopped waiting for the conditions to be right? And the tarot card associated to this decan of Aries is the Four of Wands. And you might know this image quite well. You know, the garland, the celebration, the happy ending. But here's what keeps sitting with me about this card. It's not the party at the end of the movie. It's not happily ever after even. It's the Rivendell moment in Lord of the Rings. The Fellowship made it through the first brutal stretch of the road, and the elves see them. The rest is real. The recognition is real, and the celebration of how far they came absolutely matters. And then Frodo picks up the ring and keeps going. That's what Aries energy is all about. That's what initiation actually is. It's a stopping point on the journey. And each time we level up, but we never reach an end goal. And the courage being asked for here is the courage to begin again, even while knowing everything that it takes to begin anything, even while knowing that this is just the beginning of many other new beginnings. I want to go ahead and illustrate how this astrology is showing up for me as well, because this whole stellium, all this Aries energy is landing in my 7th house of relationship. This is the part of the chart where you stop being yourself alone and you start being yourself in direct contact with another person. And I've done years of work here in that 7th house. Inner child work, recovery from people pleasing, learning to really become like a soulmate to myself. Real work that I'm absolutely proud of. And 5 planets pressing on my 7th house are showing me something I don't love seeing. At some point, I stopped using the solo work as preparation for contact and started using it as a replacement for it. And I called it healing. But being in relationship is not the same as being in isolation with the whole self-love journey thing. And I think that a lot of us have built that isolation during 14 years of Neptune in Pisces, calling it sovereignty, calling it boundaries. And look, the tools were real. We needed that. The boundary work, the attachment theories, the inner child healing. Absolutely. I use those tools. They changed my life. And they also quietly became, for a lot of us, permission to never be uncomfortable in the presence of another human being again. But here's where I want to take this somewhere that I think matters right now, because we are watching Aries energy spiral on the world stage in real time. This week, the president of the United States said on record that a whole civilization will die tonight. Those words about Iran, like about millions of innocent human lives, reduced to a bargaining chip in a negotiation about oil and shipping lanes. And whether the ceasefire holds or doesn't, those words were said out loud to the whole world. And that's Mars with no spiritual energy behind it, no spiritual warrior energy in sight. That's fire with nothing tending it but ego and leverage. And the reflex, our reflexes are a lot of the times to spectate, to scroll, to process the whole thing through a feed instead of through our actual hands in our actual lives. And I keep thinking about the two faces of Mars, right? There's the Mars we're watching right now, the Mars that threatens civilizations, the Mars that mistakes volume for strength and dominance for leadership. And then there's the other side to Mars, the pioneer, the one who builds in the rubble, the one who says the world is tearing itself apart and I'm going to make something anyway. Audre Lorde wrote that revolution is not a one-time event. And I couldn't think of a more suitable quote for this Aries energy right now. It is becoming always vigilant for the smallest opportunity to make a genuine change in established, outgrown responses. And that's the part I think we forget. We're waiting for this massive moment, this grand gesture, the uprising that fixes everything. And Lord is saying, no, baby. It's the Tuesday. It's the conversation. It's how you show up in the rooms you're already in. It's building solidarity across differences that are real, where the differences stay real and the solidarity stays real too. That's the revolutionary work. That's the Aries move we're being asked to make. We don't have to act in the same register as the destruction. We can act in ways that builds worlds instead of destroying them. And I say that knowing that my own desire has been fighting with my own comfort. My aliveness lives in my unique perspective, in my honesty, in my willingness to go places and to challenge myself, and then to demonstrate that process to others, not so that they can adopt my story, but to find their own story in that. And that's what this whole platform is. That's why I do this work. And I've been letting obligation drain the desire out of it, letting this insatiable quality of this Aries fire, always pointing at the horizon, always pointing at the ideal version, making the thing that actually is feel like it's not enough. And the trust that I'm looking for isn't something I find before I start. As an Aries sun myself, I know this energy, but the trust that I'm looking for is what accumulates on the other side of every moment I took a step anyway. And that's Saturn and Aries right there. You build evidence by moving. You don't wait for more evidence to come. All right? So let's talk about this new moon, which is landing at 28 degrees of Aries on April 17th, my birthday. And the Sabian symbol, the phrase for this degree of Aries, is a large disappointed audience. A disappointed audience. At the new moon, every astrologer is calling the biggest fresh start of the year. And I've been sitting with this image all month, and here's what I think is actually happening. The disappointed audience is inside you. It's the version of you that expected a different threshold. The version that thought, by now, after all this work, after all the healing and the self-knowledge and the brave conversations and the years of becoming, beginning again should feel lighter, should feel like an arrival, should feel like evidence that the work worked. And instead, it feels like standing at the base of a new mountain with very tired legs and a view you've never had before. The clarity is there, but the threshold doesn't look the way you pictured it. And Chiron is sitting right here in Aries as well, y'all, right at this degree, conjunct this new moon. Chiron in Aries since 2018 has been carrying this wound we all share, the wound around the right to exist, the right to take up space, to act, to be here at all. So this initiation isn't painless. It knows it's going to cost something, and you're choosing it anyway, with the wound in the room, not in spite of it, but because the wound is what taught you what matters enough to begin again for anyway. And the Sabian symbol says, let them be disappointed. Let yourself be disappointed in this, because choosing again with full knowledge, with tired legs, with the dream still in your chest, that is the courage. That takes courage. That's what initiation looks like when you're not innocent anymore. The first beginning had the bliss of not knowing what it cost, but the true courageous thing is doing it again and again and again and again, knowing that we begin again and again so many times, loves. And each time we begin from further along, each time with more of ourselves. And the disappointed audience in your head can take a seat because you're not on stage for them. You're building something real, and something real takes effort. And then April 26th comes and the whole conversation shifts register. Uranus enters Gemini, and I need you to understand what this means, because this transit is going to be in the background hum for a minute, for 7 years. Uranus hasn't been in Gemini since 1942 through 1949. And every single time Uranus has entered the sign, the technology of information has changed the world. During the Revolutionary War, pamphlets became weapons. Ideas on paper moved faster than soldiers. During the Civil War, photography brought the faces of the dead back home. And the romantic story of war collapsed because you can see what a cannonball does to a person and you couldn't unsee it. During World War II, radar, code breaking, radio propaganda, the atomic bomb, the same period that invented modern computing handed us the capacity to destroy everything. The technology outpaced the human ability to comprehend what it can do. And every time the question was the same: who controls the information? So what does that look like now? Well, we're already living it. Deep fakes, indistinguishable from real footage, AI generated content everywhere, algorithms designed to radicalize, and the question of what counts as real when the machines can generate anything. And here's what I'm thinking about Uranus that I think changes everything about this transit. Uranus is Prometheus, the one who stole fire from the gods and gave it to the people. And that fire wasn't just power. It was the awareness that the system was designed, and if it was designed, then it can be redesigned. That's the fire. The awareness that rules aren't natural law. They're choices somebody make, and you can make different ones. Now, Uranus is tilted 98 degrees. It literally said, no, I'm not going to do it like the rest of you. An almost middle finger to the rest of the solar system. It said, I'm going to ask different questions. I'm going to rebel. And in Gemini, the sign of the twins, the sign of the mind, that Promethean fire is being placed in the mind specifically. For the next 7 years, the disruption isn't about resources or the economy the way it was in Taurus. It's about how we think, what we believe, and why, what we're allowed to question. The fire is the information now. And the tarot card associated to the first decan of Gemini is the Eight of Swords, a figure bound and blindfolded, surrounded by swords. And the traditional reading is imprisonment, restriction. But here's the real read, y'all. And this is the thing I keep coming back to as well. The swords are not the walls. The blindfold is the walls. And the blindfold is the idea of truth that you've confused with truth itself. What mental processes are holding you hostage? Some of us are so certain in our ideas, in our thought processes, in the information we consume, that the certainty itself is blinding us. And we have confused that certainty with reality. And the program running in your head, the one installed by media, by algorithms, by family, by the voices that told you what kind of person you were and what questions were acceptable to ask, that program feels like your own thought because you've never been in a room where a different thought was possible. And here's where this gets real. Uranus in Gemini isn't just about the news cycle and the algorithms. It's about your conversations, the voices you let in, the people you share reality with. Sanity is a choice, beautiful people. And I mean this. The line between what makes a person grounded and what makes a person unmoored is drawn in large part by the people we talk to, the people whose sense of what's possible we borrow and fight with and grow inside of. Sanity is co-constructive, and the community you're inside of right now defines the boundary of what you're allowed to perceive. So Uranus in Gemini is going to keep putting unfamiliar mirrors in front of us, different voices, different questions, people who reflect parts of ourselves we didn't know were even running. Because here's the part that I think this real teaching is all about. The goal is not moral superiority here. There is a part of all of us, if different conditions had shaped us, could have made very different choices. We all have the capacity to be both. The Gemini twin isn't about duplicity. It's about seeing both and then choosing which one to feed and being able to recognize that in ourselves, baby. That's what helps bridge empathy to other voices in the room, even the ones we don't fully agree with. That's the revolutionary move. The values you built during 7 years of Uranus and Taurus, some of them are genuinely yours. They're load-bearing, tested, worth keeping. And some of them became walls. And we got to be careful that these defined values don't limit us from curiously entertaining and experiencing contrast as well. So the prescription for the next 7 years isn't new certainty. It's more questions than declarations, conversations that don't have a period and more of an ellipses at the end of them, right? Came from a question. Everything we experience right now, every innovation, every solution, every invention came from a question. And it's so liberating that we get to choose what self we get to give life to. That's Uranus in Gemini. That's the 7-year invitation. Lots to consider, lots to think about. Here's what I want to leave you with. One thing, just one thing. The first half of April is 5 planets in Aries pressing on the push and pull between passivity and activity. The second half is Uranus entering Gemini and asking you to get curious about who's been writing the program you've been calling your own thoughts. And underneath all of it, we got the disappointed audience, right? The version of you that expected beginning to feel like arriving, probably exhausted by beginning again. So the assignment here, and honestly, it wouldn't take much. It would just take one step. Instead of attaching yourself to the stories of why you can't, start creating more stories as to why you could. And take one step in that direction this week in your actual life. A conversation you've been having in your head, but never out loud. A relationship you're sort of in. A thing you keep describing instead of building. An ask that feels too much. One step in that direction, all the way in contact with another human being. That's the Aries assignment. That's all of it. Be brave, be bold, be intentional. All right? And look, I get it. The disappointed audience in your head was expecting someone who had it all figured out, someone who earned the right to begin again through arriving first, someone who could move without tired legs. But that's not who you are, beautiful people. You've been here. You know this fire. You know what beginning costs. And the version of you sitting in that crowd, waiting for proof that the work was worth it, well, then let them be disappointed, because you're choosing to move anyway, with full knowledge, with tired legs, with the dream that hasn't gone quiet, even though it probably should have by now. And that, my love, is the whole thing. A lot of worlds are being torn apart right now. Build a new one anyway. That's the Mars need. That's the Aries courage that has nothing to do with fighting back in the same register as the destruction. It's about making something with your actual hands while everything around you is loud and chaotic and on fire. And I want to hold this because it matters. We have been here before. Every time the world felt like it was ending, there were people who built anyway, who organized anyway, who loved louder than the destruction around them. And the arc of the moral universe, it doesn't bend on its own. People bend it with their one steps, with their brave conversations, with the worlds they refuse to stop building, even when someone with more power than them says a whole civilization will die tonight. We are those people. That's not inspiration. That's a fact. And if you want to hold this month in real time with people who are also in the middle of choosing again, well, the collective is open for y'all. We go deep on this every transit, every new moon, every full moon, every moment the sky asks something harder than you expected. The link is in the description below. Come find us there. We would love to have you. Also, I'm doing a 6-week fire intensive where we go through all of the Aries energy, all of the Leo's energy, all of the Sagittarius energy, and we understand their evolutionary call, how to use that archetypal energy to our advantage. Those cohorts are beginning very soon, so sign up. Space is limited. Again, in the description below. We'd love to have you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I hope you got something valuable from this, and I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you for the new moon in Aries.